nice to see everybody. As John says, this is a session on picking up the baton for the first time. The session's been put together by myself and my very good friend, Mr. Gareth Bowman, who couldn't be here today. And the session's going to be broken into a few different sections. There's going to be a bit of practical work, as well as looking at a few different sides to conduct and to consider. And I'll maybe even get some of your opinions and suggestions on some of these topics as we go through. So if you bear with me a second, I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, if I do this, and then I do that. Can you all give me a thumbs up that you can see that, just so that I'm not doing anything stupid? Yeah, all okay? Cool. Right, so this is where this will be interesting to see if this works for me and whether technology is my friend. So we start. The aims of the session: to explore the role of the conductor, learn and practice a few basic beating patterns. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about them as we go through the session. Explore some elements of things like planning, preparation for rehearsals, performances as well, obviously a big part of what we do. To explore the communication styles and structures. So things like, obviously this is the communication business, so we'll talk a little bit about how we kind of deal with certain situations. To explore the independence of hands. So I've got a couple of little exercises for you to do, which involves using both hands. So good luck with that one. This will be good fun. And then there'll be a bit of a conclusion where, as John says, we'll open up for some questions if anyone has any. And please don't be shy. I think most of you know me now and know that I'm not a scary character, so it'd be good to hear some of your thoughts. I like the way you laughed at that, Charlie Box. Thank you for that. So, oh, why is this being a pain? There we go. So, first thing, what is the role of the conductor? And this is where I can open this up a little bit. So, if anyone has any ideas they'd like to throw my way, I can always nominate some people. Charlie, come on, you give me a little laugh there. So come on, what do you think the role of the conductor is?
Is it like to lead the band, like give them a strict kind of tempo to follow, lead them?
Okay, I like them ideas. Anyone else? Anyone else? Wow. You're all very quiet, very quiet. Yes, sorry, I've not got your name on the screen there, but the person who has their hand up, go for it.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, Jada.
I would say to like keep the timing.
Keep the timing. I like that. Yep. Any others?
Stuart, I've got something in the chat. This is from Fiona. Help the music sound as they'd like it.
Help the music sound as they like it. Cool. I like all of those suggestions. So here is the list of the suggestions that Gareth and I put together. To choose suitable repertoire and prepare for rehearsals and performances. Obviously, a big part of the job is to pick the programs that you'll use for concerts, for maybe an entertainment contest or a part job or anything like that. To lead and conduct the rehearsals, obviously. To lead and conduct the performances when we get out and do that, whether it be on a stage or in a bandstand, for example. To motivate and get the best out your band members and the band as a whole. Obviously, a big part of, as I said before, this is the communication business. So we need to be communicating things in such a way that we get everybody working together as a team, and obviously to communicate with the band members, band officials, and obviously the audience, the scary job of comparing, for example, at concerts. So we'll move on to our first practical exercise. So I don't know, some of you might want, if you have a baton, if you're in that kind of phase, you can pick one up. If not, a pencil, or just simply use your hands. This first one is we're going to look at learning to conduct 2 beats in a bar, predominantly used with a march, obviously, as most of you know. So the main top tips that I would give you for this is I would like you to imagine you've got a tabletop in front of you. Now, by that, what I mean is it's a kind of level for where your hands don't go below. Now, the reason for that is, as some of you will know, if a conductor's hands goes too low, sections like the basses that are at the back of the band will complain heavily because they can't see where the beats lie, for example. Consider the space you're beating. Obviously, when you're conducting, you don't want to be coming away out here for every beat. You want to try and keep it in with a certain box, for the want of a better expression. That way, it keeps a hold of tempo as well. Practice in front of a mirror. I think some of you who might have heard conductors kind of talking about how to get into this and learn may have heard people say practice in front of a mirror. It's so that you can actually see exactly what you're doing. Like I'm currently looking in the camera right now and watching how I'm beating this. And subdivision. So again, something I'm sure you've heard conductors say several times in rehearsals, subdivide. What that does is it helps with your timing. So making sure that we're keeping as strict a tempo as we can within that kind of frame. However, due to the limitations of Zoom, obviously, there is a bit of a lag when I'm conducting and doing things like that. So I'm now going to pass you over to past Stuart to lead this next bit. There's a little diagram of 2 in a bar. So 2 in a bar, before we do this, we'll go down and with a little flick on the end and back up again. So it's down and out and back up, down and out and back up. So see if you can follow along with this video. Okay, folks, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find our table, which is basically just a kind of center point to keep the baton at, so that we keep the basses nice and happy. You can see us over the back. And then we're going to go down and out and back up, down and out and back up, kind of like one of those old-fashioned umbrella handles. So we get 1, 2, 1, 2. So if I put that to a tempo, we should get 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Keeping that nice flick on the end. And again, goes 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, so that was 2 beats in a bar. Again, it's just making sure you keep that point on the table each time with the flick at the end. I always refer to it as one of these, as I said, old-fashioned umbrellas. Now, for the next thing, I thought it might be quite an idea to put that to some music. So what I'd like you to do is try that beating pattern we've just done again. And except this time, we're going to play a few bars of a march that 1 or 2 of you, I would imagine, will know incredibly well. So this is a little backing track of Sladeburn.
Stuart, okay. Before you start that,
of course,
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a very smooth movement, how will the others know where beat 1 ends and beat 2 starts, please?
Very smooth movement, as in...
Well, I think what it is that they're looking at the curve and they don't see a sort of
yeah. So
arm movement.
I'll try and kind of do this within the camera so you can kind of see this. The kind of main point to beat 2 is always going to be at the kind of peak of the flick. So you're always going to get 1, and then there's always a kind of crossover point as you come back up. So it's 1 and 2 and 1 and 2, and every time as you're coming back out, obviously it does go back to what I was saying a minute ago with making sure your beats aren't too big, because if you go out here, it's obviously very difficult to kind of gauge where that first beat ends. So if you're keeping it quite compact, you get this 1 and 2 crossover back up, 1 and 2 back up.
That's a thank you, Stuart.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Cool. Okay, so let's see if you fancy giving this a go. Please do. Don't be shy to do this in front of a camera. I think we've all tried this over the last 2 years with the joys of virtual performing. So this is going to give you 3 bars of clicks before the track starts, and we'll just do a select amount of bars before I stop it, okay? Give it a go. Okay, and I'll stop that there just now because there's a few more little pieces for you to try. But hopefully that all made sense. And I saw some of you giving that a go there as we went through, which is brilliant. Now, the next part of this is planning and preparation. Obviously, a big part of the job. And there's several kind of key points or key elements to the planning and preparation before you turn up at a band room. So, first thing, choosing suitable repertoire. This is obviously a huge part of the job because obviously you've got to know your band, you've got to know what the limitations are, but also you've got to know, excuse me, what your band like. And it kind of ties in with point 2, which is the idea of knowing the collective ability of your ensemble or your band. Obviously, when you've got a youth band, one of the biggest things is obviously picking music that is, yes, going to challenge them, but the ones that they're going to like. Obviously, if you're going to do a full rehearsal of hymn tunes with a band that are, 16 and under, it might not resonate with them as much as doing 500 miles or anything to do with movies or anything like that. Obviously, as you go into the kind of adult bands, whether it be 4th section, 3rd section, and further up, it's picking music that's going to A, push them, but B, not step over that boundary as well, that it becomes too difficult for them. And it's certainly something that I personally have had to work very, very hard at over the years to make sure I'm getting the right balance there. And still work very, very hard at it as well because of, the different abilities that you get within bands. Score preparation. Now, score preparation kind of ties into that bottom one as well, because obviously you need to know your score when you go into a rehearsal, whether that be just, whether it be a youth band piece, a 4-part harmony piece, right up to test pieces. I've got a lovely example here of a piece called Argos, which gets copious amounts of jokes about the shop name, which is going to be for the Scottish in about 6 weeks' time. A lot of the score prep comes down to things like knowing your tempos, knowing your beats. Obviously, we've done a bit on 2. We'll talk a bit more about the rest later. Knowing bits about rhythms, the rhythms you have, the notes, the chords, terminology. So knowing what some of these words mean on your score. One of the biggest things I always do, and I was taught from an early age, was to write the names of the terms on top of your score. So even something as simple as andante or allegro or whatever it might be, write it on so that if you get questioned by your band, which sometimes happens, you have no doubt what that word means. Obviously, if you haven't got it and you don't know, you can always say, I'll look that up and I'll let you know. But it's certainly something that I do on a regular basis, is make sure I've got it all written on so that I'm under no kind of pressure to kind of think of what that certain names are. For example, just to give you a very kind of extreme example, in this piece Argos, there's a word called geojoso, which I've never heard of in my life, but it's apparently joyous. So that's something I've had to write on because I know the band are going to question me any day now. Does that all make sense so far, that first little bit there about preparation? It's something that takes a lot of time. It takes planning. Obviously, you've got to think about what you want to do with the band, but the more you've got that in your head and kind of, in place, the better the rehearsal can flow from there.
Stuart, one question again.
I think I just saw that pop up just now.
Did you see it?
I haven't read the question yet. I just saw there was something come up.
It says, number 2 is tricky when you have a community group with no auditions. How to manage, ? Outside scope of this session, ?
It's one of these things that it can... There's an element, and I maybe don't like using this phrase very much, but there's an element of trial and error at the start, because obviously you will get times where you might put pieces out in front of bands that are, and it's maybe a step too far, but then at least you'll know that is just that little bit outside the zone there, in which case you can go back to the drawing board, pick a piece of music that's maybe one step further down, and then by all means set the piece that, say, for example, is too hard as an end goal, something that you're going to work towards from there. I mean, I know personally I work with a band called the Galashiels Town Band. In fact, one of my tenor horn players is currently waving his arms around on screen right now. And he knows, the band is very much, it's a huge mix of abilities and ages, and it's something that, as I say, as much as I don't like the term, it's very much an element of trial and error. Was that another question just pop up as well, John?
Just a thank you.
Okay, cool. Right, I move on to our next practical exercise. This time, 3 beats in a bar. The top tips are still the same. Keeping your table, making sure that you're not making your beats too big. Again, it's something to try practice in front of a mirror, and always have that subdivision in your head: 1 and 2 and 3. Now, if I show you the little diagram here, 3 in a bar, slightly different now. So we're going to go down, we're going to come out, and then we're going to come back up again. Always come out for that second beat, and then you almost have to imagine it as like a right angled triangle. So you get 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. Again, due to the limitations of Zoom, I'm going to pass you over to Stuart to follow on with. So have a go at this. Okay, so the next one we're going to do is we're going to do 3 in a bar. So again, find our table, and we're going to go down, out, and up. Down, out, and up. Down, out, and up. So again, if I put that to tempo, we should get... 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, one more, and 1, 2, 3. Okay, hopefully that was nice and clear. Now, for our next one, I thought it might be nice for us to try something in 3 in a bar. So this is a short verse of Love Divine, or Blaine Wern, the hymn tune. Now, there's no preparatory clicks to this one. However, the first 4 bars is like a little introduction. So what I'm going to ask you to do is give these 4 bars as your preparatory and start conducting at A. So again, it's keeping that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And that should actually be about the tempo of the hymn as well. So give this a go, see how we do. Here we go. This is letter A, and stop that there. But that's brilliant. It's great to see a few of you giving that a go as well. Well done. Now, what makes an effective rehearsal? This is a point where I'm going to open it back up to you guys. What for you as brass players, what would make an effective rehearsal? What makes an enjoyable time in the band room for you? Was that something coming?
I've got a question, yes. The first one is progress.
Progress. Yep, I like that one.
Second one is challenge and fun.
Challenge and fun. Cool. Any others?
A good combo of working on individual bits and actually playing the piece. And then the last one there that I see is happy players.
Happy players. That's always a good thing to have, is happy players. I like happy players. I always tell my youth bands, grumpy people scare me. So it's always nice to see smiley faces. Right. So here's the list that's been put together here. There's a couple of these have come up. Fun, obviously you see there, but we've got purposeful, obviously making sure that there's an aim and a kind of direction for the rehearsal. Fast pace. I think for me, that's a vital one as well, because quite often as a conductor, certainly for me, and John maybe attest to this, if the rehearsal's moving at a fast pace, quite often the time goes like that and you know it's been a good rehearsal. If the time starts to slow down, you know there's had to be more kind of nitty-gritty stuff going on. Feeling like things have improved, which is good. The things that, like, there's been a collective achievement. So obviously, you know, if you can find that kind of section that you want to make sure you've gotten to and you all achieve that, it's a big thing. Collective contribution, and players have been engaged playing as much as possible. Again, really, really important. One of the big things I've always been told is to make sure that you always include every section in the band at least a couple of times throughout the rehearsal. So always meant to speak to each section of the band at least a couple of times so that they've been brought into the equation. But yeah, no, it's, and I think one of these things is there's probably a whole list more from what's on that page there, but because everybody has their own kind of aims for a brass band rehearsal, but these are certainly the main ones from our point. A rehearsal structure. Now, this is something we wanted to put in here, and the biggest thing with this is, as a conductor, you've got to kind of have a few anchor points and a few aims to get you through a rehearsal, so that, again, it goes back to the point earlier about it being kind of productive, and having that direction. One thing I will always stress, though, to conductors starting out is always have a plan B, because there could be a day you go to conduct a band rehearsal and you go, right, I'm planning to do this piece that involves the horn section, and you turn up and 5 minutes before the rehearsal you get a text message saying that at least 2 out of the 3 are not there. So what do? All right, so it's always having that plan B to then go, right, I'm going to do this instead, so that we get the most out of the rehearsal. I'll try and do a good 5 to 10 minute warm up. It could be using things like breathing, long notes, scales, and anything involving the hymn tunes that most bands have. Something I've been using a lot of recently is there's a gentleman who a lot of you'll know very well called Russell Gray, has done this book called The Messanoid Method, and it involves a lot of exercises working on things from dynamics to articulation to balance to concentration, and it's all based around the hymn books, working and getting the kind of productivity from these hymn books as we warm up. Then moving on from there, the next kind of 2 parts are very similar in the sense of maybe recapping what you've done in a previous rehearsal before then working on the piece and trying to kind of perform sections. I mean, certainly one thing I've always tried to do is to try and kind of get the band to run the piece each time at the start, or as much of it as possible, so that they're getting a chance to really blow through and see how it feels to finish a piece before we then go back and do any work and talk about any sections that maybe be causing a bit of complication. And that would be the case right the way through the rehearsal. And then this next one is one that I've just recently learned, and I think it's brilliant, is if you have any messages, any information, for example's sake, you want to say to the band, listen, that was brilliant tonight. This section here, we could maybe do just to have a little look at that, make sure it's in our heads before the next rehearsal. It's better to say it before you do your last run through. That way, you've got their concentration still. Personally, I've always, you sometimes found rather that if you get to the end of a rehearsal after you've done your last run through, you go to tell a band, especially kids, right, we're going to try this, 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 and this next week. By that point, some of them are already going, right, I'm away home to get my tea. Okay, so maybe saying that before the last run through keeps their concentration, keeps their attention, and you can get that message across before finishing off with a blow through, which is essentially, I suppose, what they're there to do. Okay, now we move to our third practical session. This turns now to 4 beats in a bar. Slightly different again. Obviously, for 3, we went down, out, and then back up. This time, however, what we're going to do is we're going to come down. We're going to go across our body for number 2 instead of out. So it's down, across our body, back out for 3, and then back up for 4. So it's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, again, keeping that table so that the hands don't go too low. What I'll do is I'll just show you the wee diagram. So there's 4 beats in the bar. You can see it there is 1, 2, 3, and back up for 4. One thing I would always try and recommend is that you, or kind of talk about, is always making sure you go across for 2. I have seen conductors in the past when they've started out went 1, 2, 3. But by that point, and also there's an exercise coming up involving cueing, you can start to get yourself a bit tangled up. So always 1, across your body for 2, out for 3, back up for 4. So follow along to this.
Okay, so for the last one, we're going to do 4 in a bar, which is down, across, out, and up. Making sure that all the time for number 2, we always go across our body. Otherwise, what we get is down, 2, 3, and we kind of tangle ourselves up. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. On that 4th beat, imagine you're hitting a tennis ball. Bang, on the way up. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Try that to tempo. And here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and we'll do that again. 1, 2, 3, and. One more. 1, 2, 3, and there.
Okay, well done, well done, well done. Now, oh no, I thought technology had failed me there. We're okay. So we're going to try a little piece now. This is actually a first movement of a new piece that was just written last year for Saba's composition project, which I thought we'd give a little go at. This is the first movement of Gareth Bowman's Pirate Adventures. Okay, there'll be 4 clicks, and then we'll play this one through. It's only about just over a minute long. Okay, so do your best. This one, the tempo picks up a bit. So whilst that was a bit steady with the 4 beats, same idea, but keep the beats nice and compact within the box. 4, 1, 2, and you'll take your tempo from the clicks. Here we go. Brilliant. Well done. It's a fantastic piece that I'm currently working on the whole suite with my my youth band right now, and they're loving the notion of the stories that go with that piece. Now, John, did I see a question just pop up?
You did. It's an interesting one. It says, so much easier to follow when there's a downwards movement for each beat, and in brackets, pointed rather than rounded on diagram to differentiate the beats.
Okay, so as in 1, 2, 3, 4 type idea?
I think probably from your diagram, which is quite...
It is very rounded. I mean,
yes.
The problem with a lot of these diagrams on that you find they are very kind of fluid in motion, so to speak. You know, it's all very, very rounded and very kind of like this. The bulk, yeah. I mean, when you're in the band rehearsal, quite often you'll get a kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, and it will be kind of there's a phrase used, finding the ictus, so it's finding that point within the beat. So 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So it's very rare you'll get somebody standing in front of you kind of conducting in that sort of form. Cool. Oh, is that another one?
Yes, it says this one for 4 was much easier than the others as it was pointed. Pointed.
Oh, okay. Okay. It's yeah. It's the one thing, as I say, with these diagrams, I'm always a bit dubious with some of them, because some of them are difficult to kind of gain compared to what you'd see when you're in front of a band, I guess. Okay, let's try this next one. Now, this is another one where I could do with some of your input, because a big part of this we spoke earlier about is the communication. Communication from a conductor is key, because if they do not communicate properly, getting certain points across becomes difficult. Some things can be misinterpreted. Some things can maybe be taken the wrong way, for example. So I asked the question, what motivates you guys as players? When you turn up to a band rehearsal and you've got a conductor standing in front of you, what do you think would motivate you from that perspective? I can see one or two typing away there. I'm just...
I think probably I would have to say motivator. Someone motivates you.
Yep. I would agree with that.
Good thing. Words of encouragement.
Yep, I like that.
Knowledge and directness.
Okay.
Music is to be enjoyed when done well, not really an answer. Okay. Someone who has prepared well. Yes, good one.
Yeah, I like them. Someone
you respect.
Okay.
Can put up with puns. That's maybe directed towards you.
It definitely is. I'm guessing that was you, Dylan, was it?
I'm not going to tell any stories, but it was.
It's all right. He's sitting nodding his head there. So is that another one just there?
Sheena says sense of humour. That must be you again.
Yep, I agree with all of them. And I think if I just move now to my list, some of them will come up. So knowing the names of the players in front of you and using them, I think it's key, especially when things are going incredibly well, to highlight that by, for example, if I was standing in front and the cornet player named John was sitting and he played beautifully, to say, John, that was fantastic, then that's something that is very, very important from that perspective. Building a rapport with the group, I think obviously you do have to click with your band. I think there has to be a kind of chemistry there between you and the band for there to be something that will work not only musically but in the general kind of rehearsal time that you have and performance time with them. Using humor where appropriate, but not at the expense of others. So obviously you don't want to be ridiculing anyone, but I think using humor is a key part of it. even if your jokes are as awful as mine, as Dylan well knows. Using praise where appropriate. Don't say it sounds good or great when it doesn't. I think is a big one again, because it's very easy to just go, that was great, that was great, that was great. But whilst you don't want to ever turn around and kind of verbally batter a player because they've done something, I think it is important to constructively say, that didn't quite work. Can we try it this way? Always offering a solution. So, for example, if it might be that they've tried something, but they're trying to play it a certain way, and that way is not quite gelling with the band, try and offer some solution. Or if on the flip side, they haven't quite understood how you've described something, again, it goes back to the idea before where I said having a plan B. So maybe thinking, how can I put this to them in a different way that will then go boom and click. The ensuring your expectations are realistic. Again, this goes back to our program, potentially your program selection, making sure that you're not picking music that's going to kind of maybe just be that step too far, or it might be, you know, you've got a player there who's only been playing 2 years, you can't expect them to hit certain things, or certain notes rather. So it's always knowing your limitations of your band. It's always knowing where you can take them without going too far. Stop and reinforce your intentions and are not realized by the players. So again, this is what I was talking about a minute ago. If, for example, you ask about your cornets or your horns or whoever to play something, but it doesn't quite click with them, try and make sure you stop and try a different way, you know, because it could be very easy to kind of brush over the point. But for example, if there might be another way that they then go, I get that. So it's always trying to think of how to get that point across so that they're on the same page as you. Insist on high standards and effort from all. Obviously, you want everybody to play the best they can. You obviously have that kind of want for them to get the most out of things, and obviously, you know, if they're not performing because they're maybe not concentrating, for example, that's something where you can step in and, you know, try and encourage them to be the best they can be when they've got their instruments to their face. And positive relationships and excellent communication with great advice, which will help getting the bands playing up to that standard. And it's really one of these things where making everything in a band rehearsal as positive as possible is key. Negativity in a band room is a difficult thing to then get the best out of your players from. You always want to be as positive as you can, even with your constructive advice. Always try and make sure you're going down the positivity route, because as it was, I think it was mentioned earlier in the questions, music is a hobby. This is a hobby. This is not somewhere, you know, where you've been, you know, you might have been at school all day or work all day or whatever, and you don't want to come and be in a negative environment. You want to come in and enjoy yourself. So positivity, whether it be the relationships or just the general rehearsal, is key. Now, how am I doing for time, John? Oh, I've got plenty of time. This is brilliant. So what I'm going to do now is move on to the next practical exercise, because one of the biggest things as conductors is that we don't just do this with one hand, impersonating Zorro and whatever else. We also include our other hand, because there are moments where you may have to cue a player to play. So again, same top tips in the sense of practicing and considering the space that you beat in. But what I'm going to do is play a little video for you to follow on, which involves cueing. So this is coordination. Can we move our right and left hands independently? Let's try it.
Okay, the next one we're going to try is a coordination exercise. Obviously, one of the big things about being a conductor is you will need to use your left hand at certain points. So the first thing is nice and easy. We're going to beat 4 beats in a bar with this hand, and then on the downbeat, on the first beat, every single bar, you're going to cue somebody. So you might imagine your cornets, your horns, your trombones, whichever you have. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now try it on beat 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now try it on 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And last on 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
There we go. Cueing. It's one of these exercises or one of these elements of conducting that is always an interesting one, because there's also this element of when we conduct, we sometimes want to use both hands as we beat. So limiting the use of the left hand so that when we do cue somebody, the effectiveness is there is really is a big thing. And it's something, you know, I'm guilty of as well. We start doing double-handed, trying to keep that independence, that kind of coordination between the two is an important thing. Now, I have another coordination exercise for you. This is one that was given to me by Russell Gray. So blame him if it's awkward, but we'll give this one a try. This one is again coordination. Hopefully this works. There we go. So this one again is coordination. We're now going to talk about crescendos and decrescendos. So moving your hand up within the time frame and back down again. See if we can follow along.
Lastly, this is another coordination exercise, something a little bit different, just to get the hands moving in different motions. What we're going to do is beat 4 beats on the bar in this hand, and during the 4 beats, you're going to signal a crescendo. So you should get 1, 2, 3, and then come back down. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Now go out the way. 1, 2, 3, 4, in, 2, out, 2, 3, 4, in, 2, 3. Now back up. 1, 2, 3, 4, down, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, down, 2, 3. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, down, 2, 3, and stop. Good.
Okay, so with that, we come to a kind of wrap up and question time. This is obviously, I've thoroughly enjoyed this, so thank you to Saba for asking me to do this. One of the biggest things about getting into conducting for me is just getting out there and getting that experience and asking your band to do, whether it be a work with a youth band or whether it be taking a march or a hymn tune with a senior band. Go on and do it. If you've got the kind of enthusiasm to do it, go out and do it and be part of it. And don't be afraid to ask questions. I think asking, the more you ask, the better. If you talk to people like Alan Fernie, for example, he'll tell you, I never stop asking questions. He's had the unfortunate duty of having to deal with me for over 20 years now, and he's had copious amounts of questions from me, and I still do it to this day, because the more you ask, the more you learn, and you can then take that into what you do. So is there any questions, John, there?
Yeah, I've got a couple. Going back to the cueing, cueing very challenging. I lose the beat with the right hand, and then someone said yes, the same for me, and then someone said yes, very. I mean, to me, it's a bit like drummers. You look at drummers and you think, how on earth can they move the right leg, the left leg, and all that? It's just something that needs practice, I'm sure, because
100%.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, 100%. It's one of these things that takes time. Certainly, making the beats relatively small. Again, if you start to get any bigger with your beats, what happens is you then potentially start to get tangled up within what you're doing. But it very much takes practice. Slow it right down, whether it be going 1, 2, 3, cue, even in your own time. and then gradually speed it up as you get more confident. But coordination in general, if you look at, sports people or anything else that involves serious coordination, it takes them time. So it's no different for us. It's just one of these things we have to just take it bit by bit until we're confident enough to do it in front of the band.
Question, can you demonstrate how to finish a piece, please?
Okay, so there's 2 or 3 different ways for me. Obviously, if there's a long note at the end, a chord, then the easiest one would be if there's a pause there to give a nice gesture of and off. Obviously, taking Argos, for example, this piece I'm doing for the Scottish, there's a single note, which is just a simple and bang, where the bass drum obliterates everybody. Or it could be one of these things where it is a slightly longer note with no pause, where you have to count in your head, where it'll be 1, 2, off. I always try and make my cutoffs as clear as I can. Obviously, especially if you are, for example, starting with a youth band, they need as clear a direction as possible. So don't be afraid to give a decent off at the end.
Any other questions? I've got a final thing from here. It says, thank you, very encouraging, but a huge challenge. Absolutely practicing essential for me. More respect to conductors. And then here's another one. Are the slides going to be available after the session?
These slides, that's a very good question. I hadn't even thought about
See
that.
if you send them to me, Stuart.
We can make them available.
I can then send them out to everyone that's was involved today.
Absolutely. I mean, it's something that going back to the comment about, it's very challenging. It absolutely is. It's something that I make the joke quite a lot with some of the players that I've worked with, that conductors aren't just Zorro impersonators or Harry Potter impersonators. We definitely do more than that. But it's something that it takes time, because it's such a daunting thing to stand there in front of a band. And, John will attest to this, you stand there with a stick and you go, and the players look at you and go, right, what are we doing? And it's so important, that we know that because it is a daunting thing. But I always think conducting being such a kind of lonely job sometimes, that we need to talk to each other and make sure you ask questions and you speak to other conductors, and and we work together. I do this thing quite a lot with Russell, where we do a course. We've done it before the pandemic up in Livingston, and part of that course was always to kind of get together for a meal before the concert and just chat, just simply chat and talk to each other, and run ideas by each other. So the biggest bit of advice is, if you're going to get into this, which I hope every single one of you will, is do it, because it's a brilliant experience. But don't be afraid to ask questions or talk to people or ask for help or anything like that, because it's something that just takes time to get used to what suits you when you're in front of the band and what suits your band as well. Is that one more?
Yes. Thank you. I'm now better prepared to stand in at youth band. Hopefully the band will agree. How would you say your conducting has changed from your very first band to your current one?
Oh dear.
Interesting.
Oh dear. Well, the very first band, well, for one, the experience certainly from a performance point of view, my very first band performance, and I think John and maybe Jerry, you'll be the only ones who know this place, was at Pontin's contest. In the fourth section was in the nightclub at that point, where as you walk to the podium, your feet stuck to the ground. So things have changed a little bit from there. But no, from a conducting point of view, I'd like to think I've gained more, obviously, knowledge in the sense of the people I've spoke to and people I've worked with. But and my style in the sense of how I beat has changed certainly, but it's something that we're constantly learning and constantly developing, constantly asking about. You know, I made the comment about people like Alan earlier on, where I'm constantly asking questions. I genuinely still do this to this day because I want to learn as much as possible from a conducting perspective.
I think probably this. I mean,
Oh,
no one's born a conductor.
no, definitely not.
But from the very start, if you watch conductors, you'll learn knowledge. Stuart and I have probably watched some of the best conductors in the brass band world, and you take little bits of everything they have,
Yeah.
and you shape it into your own thing. I take a youth band on a Wednesday, and one of our students has asked if they can conduct a piece, and I'm encouraging them to do that because you have to start somewhere.
You absolutely do. The one thing, and you kind of just hit on it there, is when you're please, you know, by all means, watch as many conductors as physically possible, because as John says, we've seen some of the best. But always make sure that when you then go to stand in front of a band, that you are you. Never try and imitate another conductor fully, because you know you know you better than anyone else, so there's no point in being somebody else when you're in front of the band. Always be you. Take bits, as John said, from these people, because it's the way you learn, but always be you. Always put across your personality when you get in front of a band.
I think the last one, Stuart, probably answers itself. It says, any advice for a novice conductor? I think probably you've just answered all of that.
I think so. I mean, the biggest bit of advice I can give is do it. And that might seem a bit of a random answer, but it 100% is do it. But on top of that, you know, as I've said before, ask questions. I always listen, always learn, and enjoy it. It's one of the best things I've ever done, is stand in front of bands, and you know, and get to do things like go to the Perth Concert Hall and you know, work with bands there, or you know, being part of I'm now lucky enough to be part of the National Children's Band team there, and it's things like that that have come from conducting. So by 100%, if you get the chance to do it, do it. And if it's something you want to do but haven't had the chance yet, speak to your conductor and say, could I please have a shot at some point? And I'm sure they will oblige.
Right, I've got another one here. Is there a best way to ask specific players about something in their part, like asking them to be louder? Question mark, question mark.
I mean, I think it's just one of these things where you've got to be direct, but obviously not in a kind of rude manner. So, for example, you know, if my front row are blasting their heads off at some point, I'll maybe say, front row, I can take just a little bit less there. You know, it's great what you're doing. I'm loving the enthusiasm, but maybe just 5% less or 10% less, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to give a little bit of advice, and that is, I learned quite early on to treat everyone the same, but differently. So what that means is you learn who's sitting in front of you, and you know that this person won't take that, and this person will take. So treat everyone the same, but differently, and that should work. It should mean that everyone should be happy. Stuart, we've run out of time.
Have we? Oh my word!
Yeah,
time flies when you're having fun.
I'd like to thank you so much for passing on your knowledge. On the slides, I think what we'll do is, if everyone who wants slides can email me to the sabbateducation@gmail.com, sabbateducation@gmail.com, I'll then forward the slides on to you.
Yeah.
A couple of thanks here, Stuart. So I think everyone's enjoyed this. And as I say, if you want slides, send an email to me and I'll get them to you. Stuart, thank you so much. Is there anything you want to say before you?
Yeah, just very, very quickly. Thank you for inviting me to do this. This is something I really enjoy doing. One thing that I didn't mention before is, as part of my role within the Brass Band Conductors Association, I'm meant to be the Scottish area rep, so if there's ever any point folk want to ask any questions along those lines, by all means, they can get in contact.
Excellent. Everyone, if you would like to just say a big thank you to Stuart. Stuart, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.